We all know the usual ways games tell us that we're evolving. Levels go up, cities are built, armors get bulkier, and gain more spikes. But on this podcast, we like to ask one question. What about the music? So come on and let's talk about when the music builds up and shows some progression itself. Welcome to Music Arcade. Hello everyone, welcome back to Music Arcade. This is Galen, the sound guy, Firestone.
And I'm Ranakel.
And unfortunately, we are once again down one Edie. He had to pull out at the last minute. Unfortunately, he's sick again. He's been going through it lately, so wish him well, guys.
Wish you well, Edie. You won your throat.
Yeah. Yeah, up until this morning, it seemed like he was good to go, but then just, it hurts to talk now all of a sudden, so that's...
Well, he was like, maybe, maybe not, maybe. Moments before he was like, possibly, yes, likely, and then he actually tried speaking, which he have been led to do during the course of this episode.
Yeah, a little hard to do a podcast without speaking. So unfortunately, that's the way of it. This episode's going to be a little different because this is going to technically be a two-topic episode. We have our main topic, but then there's going to be a fairly long section of now playing as well, so just giving you guys a little heads up on that one. This is going to feel a little different. As for our topic, evolving music. So things like variable mixing, adding instruments over the course of a game.
Yeah, since we'll have a little bit more time to dive through the topic, I think it'll be interesting to cover not just the how with some brilliant examples, I have to say, but also the why.
Yeah. And I think the intro that Edie actually wrote for us, kind of spells it out. It's evolution, and that's something that's kind of inherent, evolution and progression in video games. Like, even going all the way back to, like, Pac-Man, getting the big ball and being able to eat the ghosts. Or the original first Mario game, aka Donkey Kong, get the hammer. Yep, exactly. Now, it's very inherent in video games, but musically, it wasn't really touched upon until, and again, I picked this one entirely as a proof of concept, and we even talked about this one before. The first time I heard it was as you collected the various instruments in Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. Eventually, the song would come together as a coherent whole, and you could actually go up to the Windfish's egg and play the Ballad with certain levels of instruments.
Remind me, as you collect, say, your second and third instrument, I remember that the instrument plays along with the fanfare when you get it.
Yes.
Does it gradually build up with every instrument so far, or is it only as you get to the egg that all the instruments play together?
Okay, I can only speak to the Switch version because that's the one I played more recently. I don't remember the Game Boy version that well, unfortunately. And in that one, the fanfare was only played by the instrument you got in the dungeon.
Okay. So yeah, that builds up to a really impressive finale then.
Yes.
Satisfying.
I tried finding a YouTube video for the playlist that had the individual instruments, and I just didn't have time to search for it. I spent a lot of time searching for another one that we'll search later because the version I was planning to use got taken down. So I'm just like, oh, I now have to go searching for all of this. Wish me luck. Thankfully, I did find one, but I didn't have time to properly search for Ballad of the Windfish, so I do kind of apologize for that one.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a minefield to navigate music YouTube in general.
It really is. That said, I did want to talk about Ballad of the Windfish for exactly the reason I spoke about, and that is, it's kind of the proof of concept of this whole episode. Every instrument you get adds a layer, adds a stem, as we call it in music, to the overall track at the egg of the Windfish. Unfortunately, that does mean you can only listen to that final version once, unless you have YouTube or the CD or something.
Yeah, and I mean, it really gives importance to the fact that the little tchotchke you collect throughout the game aren't just any old crystal or runes or whatever. They're musical instruments.
Yeah, and it actually plays to that strength and actually treats the musical instruments like instruments. Like the preceding game, A Link to the Past, you couldn't talk to the crystals. Once you had them, they had their one speech, and they just stayed in your party, and that was it.
Yes.
In this game, the doohickeys, the tchotchkes, as you very Yiddishly put it, which I thank you for,
It's a good word.
it's a very good word. I like Yiddish a lot. It's a fun language. They have a tangible purpose and can be interacted with, at least at the Windfish's Egg, as often as you like. And as a kid, I would forego getting the last one for like hours and just sit there and play that song over and over again, because why wouldn't I? Admittedly, I was like a 7-year-old, so like that's the kind of thing 7-year-olds do. I don't think I would do that now, especially since, again, the magic of YouTube.
Exactly. But yeah, it's impressive, and it's a bold kind of bet to give music such an importance at this point for a game that's on a Game Boy.
Right. And I kind of want to just show, that, yeah, this is an 8-bit system. This is not supposed to have that many tracks, and yet it makes it work really well.
Yeah, doesn't it cheat a little or something to make
I'm sure it
everything
does.
fit?
I
Because,
wish I
mean,
could.
there is a bass and 8 instruments.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of trickery, I say cheating as a term of endearment.
Mm-hmm.
Finding ways to make things work within the constraints of a system is something that's always impressive.
Yeah, we talked about this a few weeks ago with the Lich Boss theme from Secret of Mana in our Weird Stuff episode. Same kind of thing.
Exactly.
You're just sort of doing things with the system it wasn't really intended to get the musical, the soundscape, the musical flow you want to fill those frequencies, to fill those tracks, and it's really impressive when something like this on a system like the Game Boy happens. And happens so cleanly, too. Like, it sounds right.
Yeah, like it's a theme that endured for a reason.
Yeah, and then you have the Switch version, which, isn't going to cheat because the Switch is immensely more powerful than the original Game Boy. Like, it's orders of magnitude. But other than the recording quality, they changed very little. They used the exact same conceit in the exact same way with the exact same method. This remake, remixed by Ryo Nagamatsu, really kind of took the music to the next level, and it just sounds great, but the actual function of the music is completely unchanged. It's just a much cleaner, nicer, more comfy version of the Game Boy original.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of understood it, but given the importance and the endurance of this track, the fact that he did right by it is already pretty important.
Yes.
And then, as far as the rest goes, the game as a whole seemed to want to be very faithful to the feeling of the original game. So the fact that they use an instrument in the same way is a nice reflection of that as well.
Yes, exactly. And that was very true throughout. Even though I had my problems with Link's Awakening as a game, from the actual, remake standpoint, it was absolutely just 10 out of 10. Kind of every note was right in both music and just the actual game itself. The fact that it was a very faithful recreation in this Link Between Worlds engine worked very well to its credit and felt very, very good to play throughout. So, and yes,
they
picked music,
such a good style for it.
They did. They really did. And yeah, the music plays into that because it is the same soundtrack you love, just touched up and remade and redone in a new time frame.
Using the hardware capabilities.
Yeah. We have the technology to make this sound like it does now, and we're going to use it. And they did, and it sounds great without fundamentally changing any part of it, which, I don't know about you guys, but that just makes me happy in a nutshell.
That's good remaking.
That is good remaking. So yeah, that's our proof of concept. Every instrument added more to the ballad, and that's the sort of thing we'll be talking about today.
Yes.
And with that, let's go ahead and send it over to you for our... I guess that's Atelier Meruru?
Yes.
Okay.
Atelier from the long series of Atelier game, and Meruru, which is the nickname of Princess Meruru Linsere de Arts.
Sure. Those were a bunch of syllables you just strung together that I'm sure actually make sense in the context of the game. Unfortunately, I've only played one little bit of this series, and that was like a day worth of Sophie, and I'm just like, this isn't for me.
Yeah, this game is basically what made me go from, these games are alright to, alright, I guess I am playing every single game in the series from now on.
Oh, wow, okay. That was that good. Awesome.
Yeah, no, I love the protagonist. It's not even my favorite game of the series anymore, but to give you an idea, I am seriously considering doing a YouTube series where I would cover the entire series, which would mean going back to play the games that came out on PlayStation first and so on, and moving up from there. In any case, so to get the events that lead to the musics we'll be talking about Dance With Me, Cultivate With Me, and Harvest With Me back in my head, I went and replayed the early part of the game, like yesterday too.
Nice.
So it's all very fresh. So,
okay.
Here's how it goes. You, as a coddled princess, get out of your castle after a fight with your kingly father, calling him a poopy head, to go practice alchemy, because that's how you roll. Eventually, since you sound serious in your attempt, the Chamberlain decides to strike a deal between you and your father to have you basically wager your independence on whether or not you'll be able to use alchemy, which you were previously forgiven to practice, to improve the kingdom. As a result, you have a certain population goal to achieve within a certain amount of time. Now go and improve the world around you.
Okay.
As a result, one of the first things you do is, well, if there's going to be a lot more people, how do we feed them? Sensible. So you go around the nearby countryside with your maid and your bodyguard, as one does, and you clear a path of some monster to eventually reach a forest. Rather sparse compared to the first forest you've been through. And that's when you listen to Dance With Me, which shows the mood of that forest. Very calm, peaceful, if a bit empty. You can almost see the mist going on. It's basically two instruments doing 90% of the work.
Yeah, it's a piano and an oboe for most of it.
Exactly. And with just that, it does a lot to set up this mood of something that's not exactly desolate, because that's way too grim of a word for the tone we have, but there's not much going on there.
Right.
It's just a piece of misty wood. And so you go around there, you cut down trees, you deliver construction materials to the workers, you eliminate a really hungry bunny carrying a durian. Don't ask. And then
why wouldn't I ask? A very angry bunny carrying a durian? That's the
best
asking.
from this area.
Okay. Sure.
There is no further explanation to that. It's just how it goes.
Okay, fair enough. Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah, and once you have done all you can, you were basically told, yep, that's all I can do for now. I'd better report the task because it will take some time to see the changes. So you return to the castle, you travel, it takes several days. The game keeps track of the days passing by.
Right.
You have a time limit like that. And eventually, when you return to the area on the way to reopening the mines or something, you have a panning shot of the transformed area, which has the similar layout, but there's bridge over a previously impassable river, there's cabins built up, there's fields that have grown around them. It basically doesn't look at all like the forest it once was. It's a visual and indeed, due to the change in music, auditive representation of the very direct effect of the work you've done. It's incredibly satisfying.
It sounds that way.
Sure, you already have the ability to make some orders, to do things like build up a school, which gives you bonus experience. But it's just an icon on the map, basically. It's not something that you can walk through. This you have been through before, and you can walk along those fields. I actually forgot it was a wood before playing the game again just now, because it had ingrained itself in my memory as that's the farming area. That's where it is. And as a matter of fact, this identity is sealed visually. The map icon changes and the music changes. The new instruments are added to it. The existing ones change as well. Basically every note on the piano that was a single note before is now a little accord.
Yeah, I did notice from the song that the piano got a lot more energetic. The intro even got a little more energetic. They added a bunch of instruments starting at the first verse. Oh dear.
There's this, I don't know what instrument that is, but there's this instrument that does kind of a buzzing sound that make it look like you can almost see the insect hopping around the wheat fields, which you can actually collect as part of alchemical ingredients.
Okay.
And it's that much richer. And then it goes one step further. I don't remember when, but you can take missions that add to areas you've been through already. And at this point, it basically becomes like our festival song, which gets almost too rich and too busy at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say that one gets a little crazy. Now we're things are happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the going into the main body of the song after the piano and oboe intro, it gets, there's like this synth pad that goes into it, and then it just goes into this just weird instrumental just mess. It's intriguing. I'll call it intriguing. I definitely think in terms of which song I like best, the second one I think has the right balance, but the third one is, seeing the evolution, hearing the evolution is very interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's jubilant, and I think they can afford it because by the time you trigger it, you have many more areas that are open. You're probably not going to spend your days right there, but when you do, it's basically a representation of your achievements all around.
Yeah.
There's other areas you improved as well, which improve the quality and diversity of the materials you can get there. But not all of them have music that transform. Only those where, like this one, it used to be a woodland and now it's a farmland. The essence of the area has been fundamentally changed. And another woodland, you just make it healthier, pick up weeds that stifle all the other vegetation and all that, but it's still woods. But if the place is fundamentally transformed, they kind of celebrate that. And it feels good.
I get it. I reminded a little bit of a song from Trails in the Sky that is also kind of a festival song, just musically. It's not like... It doesn't come about the same way. It's just a festival, but the intro especially just sort of has the same vibe, just by different instruments. I don't know why I brought that up. That song's been kind of playing in my head as well, once I heard this song.
Interesting. I don't think I've heard it. I only played like a few hours of the first Trails in the Sky, and didn't really persist. I don't remember why.
It's a slow start of a game. It's a slow start of a franchise. I would highly recommend Trails of the Side the second, but you really do need the first one to understand what the heck is going on.
Yeah, it's kind of like Babylon 5, where first season isn't all the same level as the other one, but you kinda need to see it anyway.
Mm-hmm. I would make that same argument with Farscape, at least certain episodes of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or with FF14.
Yes, ARR is kind of blah compared to the later stuff, but if you don't play ARR, you're not going to know what the heck is going on later.
Yeah, and the problem is that they actually like to pay things off.
They do. We're getting
You know what other game has some interesting payoffs? NieR. Yep, that's it. That's my transition.
I love it. We were off on a tangent. I'm about to bring it back in, and you're just like, we're hitting button now. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
So, the second this topic was brought up, my brain immediately went to this song, like instantly.
Yeah, and I'm glad it did, because we never really talk about NieR soundtrack.
Yeah, we never really talk about my favorite soundtrack of all time, which I think I talk about nearly every week. That's basically never, right?
Basically.
Yeah, no, I do talk about this one a lot, but this song
it's good, so don't stop.
It's not just good, it's also honestly, compositionally, and technically very amazing, and this is one of those songs that I would honestly describe as genius. This is the ultimate weapon, which plays in Emil's manner. And there's a bunch of variations of this. And this song I've always just sort of been in awe of. Because it starts with this, like, quiet, haunting a cappella as you first start exploring. And as you come back and get deeper and discover its secrets, as you go, you recognize it starts adding more instrumentation. It adds a piano line, gives it an additional haunting quality, starts adding other instruments and drums, and by the time you're at the bottom and you're in battle, you're going through this, like, almost Resident Evil basement. I swear I thought I was going to fight a tyrant into this place.
Yeah, it adds to it, but we kind of see a progression that's very different from the previous track. When the previous track is like, there's more life in there, there's a festival that eventually fires, there's bugs all around that hop in merrily. Here it's like, okay, each instrument makes you go, oh no, oh no, oh no.
Yeah, it gets more tense, more desperate.
Yeah.
It is just a beautifully haunting track. Like usual,
it's a track that starts worrying and ends up making you pretty certain there's no good ending.
Mm-hmm.
To this situation.
Yes. Yeah, and I've always just sort of been in awe of this song, because while I've heard variable mixes and I've heard progressive songs before, I've never heard one that starts and ends so differently from each other, and yet the progression is completely natural.
Yes.
Like, if you were to compare the very first version of the song to the very last version of this song, I feel like you would kind of recognize it's the same song, but you would not realize how it got there unless you listen to the full progression of it, which I think is kind of...
And then when you listen to the full progression of it, you're like, I guess this added something. Wait, when did it get added?
When did it get there? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Boiling the Frog.mp3.
Boiling the Frog.mp3?
Yeah, in reference to that expression about how to boil a frog, you, instead of throwing it in hot water immediately, where it just jumps out, you put it in cool water and then you heat it up progressively until the point it doesn't realize it's being cooked.
I've never heard that phrase before, and honestly, that's terrifying.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But it's not a French expression, it's an English one. I swear.
I believe you. I've never heard it before. I have no reason not to believe you.
Dude.
Still terrified. Wow, that's going to give me nightmares. Gonna have a sip of coffee now.
Just think of its value as an expression rather than as a culinary practice people would actually do.
I will attempt to do so. Getting back to the song now, so I'm not thinking about boiling frogs. Instead, thinking about giant skeleton monsters and haunted manors, and it's not that much better,
Very good.
but
That's much healthier.
yeah. At least I can fight the shades off.
Yeah, which has never caused any problem whatsoever.
Never. God, I love this song.
Yes.
I've spoken about the kind of mad genius of Keiichi Okabe when he's at his best at length, borderline ad nauseum. But I kind of think this song in particular is the main example of when he's on, he is on. Because it takes what we'd already established as a variable mix in this game, which it did a lot of that, like Hills of Radiant Wind, which I've talked about in the past. You wouldn't have drums, but then battle would come in, you'd have drums, and it's seamless. It just fades in and out. And similar patterns have stayed into Automata. This is similar patterns stayed into Drakengard 3. This is just sort of what he does when working with Tario. But in this particular case, it adds so many layers and so much depth to it over the course of exploring this manor, yes, including in battle.
Yeah, basically the previous example is like, you're in a battle, now you're out of the battle. Here it's, you're in trouble, now you're in bigger trouble, now you're in bigger trouble.
Exactly. And it just works in just such a perfect kind of way. I've called this my favorite dungeon theme of all time, but this is kind of underselling it. Because it almost isn't a dungeon theme, it almost transcends that and becomes something kind of primal and emotional. I don't know, I have a hard time describing all of this in words. It's just so much there. The song itself is not even that simple. Like, it sounds kind of simple because it's like a few different phrases, just A, B, C format repeated. But between Emmy Evans' haunting vocals, a piano line that switches between minor key and modal keys, it's just so well composed, even just at its final, if you just listen to the final version itself, just alone, without any of the progressive elements, even then, it still sounds like an amazing piece of music.
Yeah, unlike Harvest With Me, it isn't overly busy at its final point.
Yeah, then it's only like 5 or 6 instruments. I think it's just vocals, piano, drums, and a few string elements. And it just works so damn well. I keep gushing about this one for good reason. Now, over the course of trying to find the individual tracks of this one, because unfortunately, the tracks associated with the Dark Id's hilarious text-based Let's Play of this game were taken down, and that's what I was using for the individual elements up to this point.
No, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I did find a version from the NieR Replicant version numbers, because Tario doesn't know how to name expansions or DLC. He's worse than the rest of Square, which is really something, because the rest of Square is really bad at that too. I discovered the Replicant version is actually, incredible. Actually adds
it's the kind of results you like to see when you're doing a little bit of a search.
It isn't as big of a difference as the Windfish one from earlier. This remake is really just the same song, just re-recorded, a little more life in the mix, and then they added kind of a new bridge section that I thought was really cool. But that's not much of a difference, and the core of the song is still identical, and it works just as well as it used to. It's just a brilliant frickin' song.
I mean, the hardware gap is certainly not as big, so...
Yeah.
That checks out.
Yeah. And with that, I think that's about all the gushing I can do about this song.
Before we do, I know there's something else on the production order, but talking about this song kind of reminded me of another one, not for some reason, and since we are going pretty fast, I thought we might as well mention it.
Sure.
Because the way things evolve when trouble is brewing, and the way the transition works naturally reminded me of a couple of tracks from Yakuza Like a Dragon.
I unfortunately haven't played that one yet, but please continue.
Yeah, you are infiltrating a place.
Right.
Which I will not clarify because it would be spoiling to talk about some of the details of that element and the people you go through and so on. But basically, after a lot of just bashing random people in the face, you have kind of a stealth section. And you can actually avoid patrols, and but you're still a team of heavily armed madmen. So if you do have an encounter, you can get out of it. And you kind of should get into fights because the music and the transition from one music to the next is kind of amazing. Now, yeah, so I was thinking of that track mostly because, well, it is a dungeon theme that adds on the trouble, except it's not exactly the same kind of trouble, and you don't exactly deal with it the same way.
Right.
And the infiltration track is already very tense and kind of droning like that. That bass is heavy.
That bass is very heavy.
And there's very little else. It's kind of like you having that worry that things are going to go wrong, and when they go wrong, well, it's not, oh no, panic, it's more, well, kind of like the lyrics say, actually. Broke it, fix it, run.
I'm guessing you're not supposed to fight in here, question mark?
No.
Okay.
You can, and honestly, it's not that much of difficulty increase, especially compared to the boss of the area that you actually have to fight, and that is actually probably the game's single biggest difficulty increase, and it is entirely deserved.
Okay.
But that's another track. This one is kind of fantastic for a track you kinda not supposed to listen to. Then again, this game soundtrack as a whole is one I like a lot, but this one, the transition in particular from calm to active and then back to calm as part of the track too, is one that stayed with me.
I get it. Yeah, no, I only listened to it just before we started talking about it, and even then it's kind of like in my head. It's a very catchy song. It's an earworm. It gets in there. Yeah,
especially since the first track, like, you listen to it for a couple of repetitions, but the main sound is present throughout the track, which you can hear for minutes at an end, so that makes the change all the more notable.
Yeah.
Alright, now then, let's move on to the last of the tracks, which is a little bit of a step back in time again, and certainly a different kind of evolution.
Even without having listened to it, because I'm already very familiar with this soundtrack, I'm pretty sure I know exactly what we're going to talk about. So
yeah, we mentioned gaining levels, gaining expanding areas, but this time it's a power-up that changes the entire soundtrack. Well, not the entire, I think some part of like bass music and the castle don't change, but most of the levels, basically paying attention to that, it almost seems like the tracks were designed with that change in mind from the get-go and are complete once you get the power-up in question. Yoshi, you're getting Yoshi.
Mm-hmm.
It adds drums.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the tracks, and all of the tracks it changes, don't have drums as a main part of the sound, so that the Yoshi drums can be added.
Yeah. And this is another one of these that just seems kind of obvious in retrospect, but was also kind of incredible for its day. Like we mentioned, the hammer from Donkey Kong, also a Mario game, and it would change the music to the hammer theme when you get it. This one keeps the track playing and just adds drums, which for the very first launch game on the Super Nintendo is actually very cool.
Yeah. Basically, they said Yoshi is not like the other power-up. First, he's on the cover. Okay, cool. Take it, enjoy it, great. But he's even more special. So he gets his own tracks. Every track.
Yeah. Okay. Stupid question and probably not relevant or prepared for. I don't actually remember because it's been so long since I played. Did it also add drums and sunshine when you got Yoshi?
I think it did.
Okay.
But I am not certain. It's been a while since I played Sunshine. What other music change Yoshi is associated with, however, for sure, is that in Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, when you're in the level selection, every time you get to a new world, there's an instrument added to the menu theme. Apparently, adding instruments to things is kind of Yoshi's thing.
I appreciate this.
Or at least was Yoshi's thing, and then they made it go from weird squishy noise to wrong, and kind of changed the platonic ideal of Yoshi.
I mean, as much as I want to talk about this, we're a music podcast, not a sound design podcast, and frankly, I think I'm going to get a headache arguing what the platonic ideal of Yoshi is, other than you sit on a green thing that eats enemies and spits out eggs.
It's important, because I'm not crazy, I swear.
I'm not saying you are. I'm going to go crazy, however, if we continue talking about this.
Fair. But it's also interesting that you say it's not music related, and I would actually disagree, because the musical identity of Yoshi from these two games to Yoshi Island 2 or whatever, whichever one was on the Nintendo 64, are so radically different that they are almost two different characters. Even though they look exactly the same.
Okay. I'm not sure I agree necessarily, but I at least kind of get it.
Okay, just consider the following.
Okay.
Yoshi in Super Mario World. Getting onto Yoshi adds some energy. You get the drums, you have a pep in your step. Poo.
Right.
Yoshi's in, say, Crafted World or Woolly World or 64. Very soft tones, very gentle. It's almost opposites of a vision of the character.
Huh. Okay.
And I can feel this evolution in the musical representation of the character, perhaps most distinctly of all. Now that's going maybe a bit too much in depth into what is ultimately a video game cartoon inflatable green dinosaur.
Right. Inflatable? Well,
yeah, that's why it makes puffing noises.
Okay, sure. I thought that was just sort of magic from the Magic Koopa sticking it in the egg, but okay.
Point being, It gave the character enough importance that the power-up became its own character in the end.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it always was, because the first time you get Yoshi, it talks to you, so...
Yeah, sure, but I mean... there's plenty of other being like Lunas talk to you as well, and they don't have a Yoshi level of impact.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay.
And part of it was because they don't have as much of a musical identity, which has been cemented with, honestly, like, it's like I said, it's less that the track gains drums when you get on Yoshi, is that the track loses drums when you get off of it, or when you don't have it yet.
Right.
And that's quite the tour de force for a game that's over 30 years old.
Yeah, what was it, 91?
90, I believe.
90 flat, wow.
Yeah, I think so.
The Soviet Union still technically existed when that game came out.
Didn't end in...
The Berlin Wall fell in
91 was...
Yeah.
Yes.
The Berlin Wall fell in 89, but the Soviet Union itself didn't collapse until 91.
Exactly, yes. Thank you for this moment of History Arcade.
I mean, I think it's important context, because that was a massive world-changing event that happened in at least my lifetime. And
I mean, one of my first memory was watching the TV talk about moving a governmental institution from Bonn back to Berlin.
It was kind of a... Yeah, I don't want to dive into this particular topic too deeply, but in terms of just how long ago this was, yeah, the world literally changed after... in a major way after Super Mario World came out, and it was able to do this sort of thing. I'm pretty sure it was actually before, I think it was before Link's Awakening, too.
Yes.
I think A Link to the Past was like 92, I think. And Link's Awakening is a sequel to that, so, yeah, wow.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I remember that one of the early arguments for the Super Nintendo that they really pushed was in the sound department. That's an example, and I remember Actraiser was also a very strong proponent, which is why they released, along with the game, the Symphonic album.
Yeah, I've been thinking about history a lot lately, especially music history, for reasons we will talk about shortly, believe it or not. But, yeah, it's amazing to think just how that little change, a drum track attached to a power-up, how impactful that really was for all the reasons we've been talking about. Variable mixing is a thing that really only video games can do.
Exactly. It's a way games respond to your actions and make you feel about the impact of what you're doing.
Yeah.
About how you're doing more than just pressing buttons in the order you're given them.
And I think that's something that I'm largely an opponent to visual novels for exactly this reason. If it's just a straight click-through visual novel, there's no reason for it to be a video game at all. Because video games, their core is interactive. And that interactivity is a major part of what makes a video game important. It's the thing that movies can't do. It's the thing that novels can't really do. You can, like, a choose-your-own-adventure novel, but even then, you don't have that much of a say in what happens.
Yeah, like, if you have just a written story flat, you're like, oh, cool, the character did that thing. Hey, good for them.
Yeah.
Even if with something that's extremely close, when you're presenting decisive evidence as Phoenix Wright and suddenly the music escalates, that's you.
Yeah, you have made the choice to interject in the game world, and having the game world respond to that in a clean way is really something that is just incredible. getting that feedback is important to a gameplay experience.
Yes.
So when you do collect the instruments and go up to play the Ballad of the Windfish, the fact is you collected those instruments and you are now reaping the rewards of that action. You did that, and you can now experience the effects of it.
Actually, that conclusion kind of remind me of another track in particular.
Oh.
I don't know if you know that game. It's called NieR.
Oh god, here we go again. All right, yeah, no, never heard of it. It's not like we didn't talk about it recently or anything. Oh god.
Yeah, no, but seriously, though, all joking aside, the fact that the rewards from one of the side quests is the version of Song of the Ancients that's sung with both characters, both Devola and Popola together.
Right, and it's
literally
only
the
time...
quest reward.
Yeah, and it's the only time you hear it. You have to get, I think it's Popola drunk, so she has enough liquid courage to go up on stage and sing with her sister.
Exactly, and the moment you go out, you can't listen to that track again this playthrough.
Yes. That was really brilliant, yeah.
Yeah. And I distinctly remember doing that quest, having that reward that has no in-game interest at all, and thinking, oh yeah, that's pretty cool, and not feeling cheated because having that version of the song that's different because of what you did is a great moment. It's satisfying.
It is. Yeah, and
games can truly play with that in a very unique way.
Yes. And that's one of the things that makes video games special. One of the things that makes video game soundtrack special. One of the reasons I love doing this show. Because I think video games have significant, incredible artistic merit, and that deserves to be discussed and celebrated as often as possible.
Heck yeah, and not only compositionally, but in the way that's implemented.
Yeah.
The artistry and technology are kind of blending together a lot of the times.
Yeah, in ways that movies just can't. A movie score is always going to be that movie score, with a couple of, weirdo exceptions.
Yes.
But generally speaking, if you're watching a movie on Netflix, it's going to sound the same. The output is going to be the same every time you play it. Not so much the case with video games. Depending on what...
Thinking about it, the way same soundtrack can have different ways it's interpreted depending on situations such as your input, isn't it kind of like how listening to the same track on two different concerts can give you two different interpretations and two different emotions?
Which is funny, because I saw 2 concerts yesterday. Is this our transition into now playing?
Oh, yes! Yes, that's not a coincidence.
Okay then, now playing!
Yes, that's me bringing us to that topic.
Okay. So, as of recording, yesterday...
You're welcome, by the way.
Thank you, yes. Today, as of recording, is the 15th of May. Yesterday, the 14th of May, 2022, I was in San Diego for a New World Intimate Music from Final Fantasy, the Chamber Orchestra concert series from arranger Eric Roth, brother of Arnie Roth, who runs the live concert division, who also conducts Distant Worlds. Now, I've talked about these in the past a lot as well. I'm really kind of repeating myself today, but it's because they're so good and I keep coming back to them. I like A New World a little better. I do love Distant Worlds a lot. I love hearing the big orchestral bombastic variations of the Final Fantasy music because, that's kind of what Uematsu was good at. But yes. I like the chamber orchestra version because it takes a lot more risks on the arrangements. Arnie Roth is a decent arranger. You know what you're getting with an Arnie Roth arrangement. He doesn't really push the envelope in any meaningful way. He doesn't really take risks on his set list. The opposite is true for A New World. Eric actually kind of does some interesting things and plays a lot of songs that they wouldn't be caught dead playing at Distant Worlds. A lot of songs
like
that just...
the track selection, you posted it somewhere, and even as someone who has played a lot of Final Fantasy and listened to a lot of Final Fantasy, I don't know out of the top of my head all of those tracks.
Yeah, I knew most of them. The only one I really didn't know off the top of my head was Selbina from FF11, but that one I know from the concert series, so that's just one of those songs that I know from concerts.
I see.
So, Eric's, stage banner yesterday was actually very much like history. So I've been thinking about it. So this year, 2022, is the 35th anniversary of the Final Fantasy franchise. Now, I thought that was going to lead him at the time into Chaos Shrine from FF1, of which they have a very good mix, but they didn't actually play that this time. It started with A Place to Call Home from FF9. That was their intro, which is a very unusual intro, and I don't think Distant Worlds ever would have done that. Usually they start with, a battle theme. Usually they'll start with, Big Bridge or something. This one started with A Place to Call Home. And that's just this really kind of really great intro theme, to be perfectly honest.
It eases you in gently.
It does. And then it just hits the ground running and goes into the decisive battle, the boss theme from Final Fantasy VI, which I love the New World I love the New World mix of this. And it's not even in my top 5 of songs they played yesterday, so that's really saying something.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the first big surprise, I say big surprise, though I've heard New World play it before, was actually track number 4, Crimson Sunrise from FF14, the Kugane Town theme. Eric Roth can get Soken music in his program. Arnie cannot.
No.
I have never heard at Distant Worlds a track composed by Masayoshi Soken. They played FF14 music. They played Primal Judgment from Uematsu. That's Ifrit's boss battle theme. They've played Torn from the Heavens by Naoshi Mizuta, which is kind of one of the big FF14 themes, but never any of Soken's themes. Yeah. This one got Crimson Sunrise, which is pure Soken. My free company house lives here, so I was very familiar with the song going into it, so I'm just like, this makes me happy. One of the new tracks they played was immediately thereafter, Land of the Dwarves from FF4. That one is one that Distant Worlds would never play. Danger in the Forest from FF9 was another really, really excellent one. What was interesting is basically all of the strings were doing pizzicato, and that's the fancy Italian music word for when they strum the violin or viola or cello as opposed to bowing it.
Yes.
And
so it goes boom.
Yeah, exactly. So they had the entire string section doing that.
Only the finest and most precise music terms here on this podcast.
I mean, yeah, I try to be music theory accurate when I can. I'm not perfect, but, I try.
Yeah, no, I was contrasting to the it goes dong.
Yeah, okay, fair. Fair.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a self-own.
Okay, got it. Right before Danger in the Forest, they actually played a song from FF12, the only Sakimoto they played that night, Sorrow, Resistance Army version, of which Eric joked there's 4 other versions on the soundtrack, which is true. This was not my favorite, but I like the fact that they did spread out and they played some Sakimoto there. Now, the next 2 tracks after Danger of the Forest were both from FF8. Force Your Way, the boss theme, which was really, really great. Again, I really like this mix they do for New World of Force Your Way. I don't think... normally, I don't think this is the kind of song that can be played by a full orchestra. Usually it's got too much synth going on, so Distant Worlds has never touched this one. But this is one of these songs that that New World will go for and do a kind of a crazy mix of, and it sounds great. In fact, the very first time I saw New World was actually in Nassau County, New York, followed 2 days later by Connecticut. They didn't play it tonight, but they had a version of Battle with Seymour that was just the lead string section. So 2 violins, viola, and cello, and that's it.
Ooh.
And it was just one of the wildest songs I ever heard. And it was just every instrument had like a hard solo. And this is Battle with Seymour. This is like 80% synth on the FF10 soundtrack.
Honestly, the way you're talking about this soundtrack and the way they kind of taking tracks that are well loved and asking themselves, what can I do that's interesting, that's fun with that, to give it a style. It's kind of what I've wanted from Distant Worlds and even the Black Mages.
Yeah.
Which can be a bit too close to the original at times.
It can. I mean, realistically, the Black Mage's version of Those Who Fight Further, the Final Fantasy VII boss theme, is really just the Final Fantasy VII boss theme, fully orchestrated, like with an actual band, and adds a guitar solo. It's a great song, but it's not really adding very much except a guitar solo.
Yeah.
On the subject of guitar solos, though, Find Your Way from FF10, one of the dungeon themes, and honestly, another contender for one of my favorite dungeon themes of all time, though the Ultimate Weapon, just overall in my personal rankings, blows it out of the water. This one had a problem, and that is the guitarist last night. Everyone in this group was really good, with special shout-outs going to the percussionist, the flutist, and the reeds player, who swapped throughout the night between clarinet, oboe, and baritone saxophone. This guitarist, on the other hand, was a 7 out of 10 player having a 4 out of 10 night.
No.
This guy borked Find Your Way twice, like very obvious flubs. I feel bad for him. I do.
Yeah.
But I also don't, because, dude, you're supposed to be a professional musician. Everyone else is playing their hearts out. What is going on with you? You're in front of an audience. Get the jitters out, please.
Yeah, that'll happen, but that's never pleasant when it does.
Yeah, and it happened twice in two completely different places, because as I said, I actually saw both shows last night. I would have only seen one, but Ryan was at the second show, so I went to the second one as well to hang out with him and got tickets right next to his seats. Yeah. And he messed up in a completely different place the second time, and not just that, but messed up so badly the piano player had to, like, correct, and then he messed up as a result. Oh. And I'm just like, no, Find Your Way, what happened here? Then it goes into Boundary Busting Lestalem, one of the few tracks not composed by Yoko Shimomura from FF15. I don't know about this one. I don't think this was a great... I mean, it was okay. It was in the same kind of vein as Yasef Maschif, I think it is, from FF13. I'm not good with those words, but New World does a mix of that actually sounds very, very good. This one they did Boundary Busting Lestalem that I didn't think was that great. It was fine. It was fine. It was a fine mix. I didn't get anything from it, but it wasn't Shimomura. It was one of Shimomura's better soundtracks. Not that she has a bad one or anything. But they picked one of the few songs not composed by her. And I'm just like, with her love of strings and especially viola, you'd think they'd find a mix somewhere in there. Like, they're never going to do Apocalypsis, but they could maybe do a version of Veiled in Black that'd be pretty cool.
There's options.
There's options. After this is two of the signature songs from A New World that I really like. Dark World from FF6, which is the first World of Ruin overworld theme before you get the Falcon. The fact that they play this at all is kind of amazing. This one...
Yeah, it's not exactly one of the most remembered tracks, but it's probably one of the most impactful.
It is, and it sounds great live. You can find a version of this on the first New World CD. It is one of their signature songs. Another signature song is another song that I don't think, again, Distant Worlds would ever have touched, and that is Red Wings from FF4. That's kind of the song I think of first when I think of A New World. When I think of this set list. It's just the way it runs together is just really fantastic. I will say the pianist was decent, but their original pianist, Benjamin Noose, doesn't seem to be touring with them anymore, and I don't know if that's pandemic related, because I think he kind of stopped before pandemic, because the last few shows...
The name does ring a bell.
He's been kind of all around Final Fantasy music. He's very good friends with Masashi Hamauzu, and they've co-composed. So he's a German composer living in Japan with his wife, who is Japanese, and he works with Square quite a bit. He hasn't been part of A New World for a while. I'm hoping they bring him back at some point, because he's always fantastic, and he's got a couple of like solo mixes of FF7's battle theme and of FF10's final boss theme, like the actual. I won't say the actual final boss theme, but the final boss theme with the crazy piano stuff.
Oh,
he's one of the few guys who can play that.
I remember why I know the name. He's the one that plays the piano on the first concert of the FF14 FanFest.
Oh, wow, they had him for that even. I was not aware of that, although that makes sense. If anyone could do like Footsteps in the Snow, it'd be him. Because
I think that was before that. That's for the concert version that was sung with Susan Calloway.
Oh, okay. So after that, we have another new one added to the list, Lena's theme from FF5, yet another song that I don't think would ever be touched by Distant Worlds. It's much too quiet. It's kind of an obscure character. Like, I don't think the cast of FF5 is really as well known as other Final Fantasy casts.
Yes. Like, FF5 is more known for the job system than for its characters, really.
Right. So, it is... That was honestly a standout from last night's show. I thought that one was really cool. I like how the flutist really took charge. I will say the flutist seemed to be the one enjoying the music the most. Everyone was very professional, again, except the guitarist, who, not great. But this flutist seemed to be, like, getting into it more than the others. Now, that could just be a matter of professionalism, because second violin, I noticed, like, she had a scowl basically the whole night, but she was always very on point with the actual performing. I don't know if she was just, like, really concentrating hard. Whereas this flutist was clearly, like, you could see from her body language, she was, like, vibing, if you will. Didn't affect her performance at all. She was very, very good, and this was one of the songs where she could really go. Then you had the town theme from FF1. This is kind of a traditional one. I don't remember if the guitarist flubbed this one, but I do know it's a pretty sizable guitar part. Xanarkand from FF10, which they used to describe as a song that's actually mandated by Square to be in every Final Fantasy concert, but it's gorgeous, so... No one really argues with that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's followed by one that's also probably mandated, but is a lot less interesting in chamber, and that's the Everywhere One-Winged Angel.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember back in the Nassau County show, they actually did not use this as the closer. They played it towards the end, but the closer was actually Force Your Way, which is a much more interesting mix for A New World. One-Winged Angel tries. They try with One-Winged Angel. It's never quite landed, I don't think.
Yeah, One-Winged Angel is orchestral at its core.
It really is. So, they have to play it. I think audiences would riot if they... Yeah, like Edie said, I'm guessing they played One-Winged Angel less because it would work well as a chamber piece, and more because people would be annoyed if they didn't try to play it. I think that hits the nail right on the head.
Yes.
I think if they skipped it, people would be very angry. I wish they would. I don't think this is the right format for it. After this, they had the main theme FF1 guitar solo, so it was just the guitarist. He did not play this correctly either time. He missed notes both times, very glaringly, because he didn't have other instruments to hide his crimes, as Adam Savage would say. And Ryan, when this happened, he's like, they gave the worst player the solo, and I'm like, I don't think they picked the player before they picked the song. I think the set list was mandated before we came to San Diego, and I think this guy just wasn't up to it. And then they finished off with the Chocobo medley, which is another one that I kind of think they should have left on the table. It's cute.
It's cute.
It's cute. Or maybe they should have played it kind of in the middle, near boundary busting Lestalem. It's fine. I just don't think it makes a great closer.
Yeah.
But no, the set list was really good last night. They had the 3 new songs. They had Land of the Dwarves, Find Your Way, and Lena's theme, all of which are usually excellent. I've described Final Fantasy VIII as my favorite Final Fantasy soundtrack, and I stand by that. And Find Your Way is a great reason why. Like, that's just an excellent dungeon theme, and they played it really well last night with the guitarist notwithstanding. The musicians were all excellent. I mentioned the backing instruments, especially this percussionist. This percussionist I want to give an absolute shout out to. They had a lot of different instruments throughout their percussion. They had xylophone, marimba, drum kit, various cymbals, the one hanging tubular bell they used for One Winged Angel, which I thought was hilarious. And this person...
Sometimes you just need a ding.
Yeah, it was more of a bong, but yes. But yeah, no, so the fun thing about the triangle, and I've mentioned this before, the triangle is this tiny little instrument that really just rings out far louder than it has any business ringing out. You have to have a light touch to play it in a setting like this one and not have it completely overpower every other instrument. And this percussionist was on point with that, on point with individual cymbal strikes, on point with the drum kits, even had a little mini drum solo during Force Your Way. And yeah, everything they did was just the right amount of volume, the right amount of power, without being overpowering in a setting like this. I was very, very impressed by this percussionist. I don't know who they are. They were unfortunately not credited, and there were no programs for the show. So on the extreme off chance that you're listening, you were incredible yesterday. Thank you. Also,
it's a shame.
Yeah. I also mentioned the reed player, who, as I said, swapped between clarinet, oboe, and baritone sax throughout the night, and they were very, very good. Yeah, the only standout problem was this guitarist who flubbed more than once each show, and I'm just like, what happened here?
Maybe they had another one that was supposed to be there, but then couldn't.
It's possible that was a sub, yeah. But yes, I greatly appreciated that show. I'm glad we're back. I've made very clear that I love concerts. I love Final Fantasy and video game music concerts. Since this is the 35th anniversary, they are doing a new program later this year. And that will be showing in LA, Vegas, elsewhere, quote unquote, and beyond, which got a lot of applause when he said that.
May it not feel forced to play one Wiggle Angel that were not really fit.
That'd be nice. I wish I could talk to Eric Roth. I don't want to make requests, but I'd love to hear that Battle with Seymour mix come back into the playlist. And as I was hearing Crimson Sunrise, I thought that Charlie and Day Theme would actually be really good for Chamber. That would be a kind of mix they could go with. And if they had a guitarist who was competent, it could work really well.
Now you're making me dream.
Right? That one seemed like a pretty obvious fit. And then, yes, bring back Chaos Shrine, because it's the 35th anniversary of Final Fantasy I, and they essentially played 2 Final Fantasy I themes toward the end, one of which wasn't even really a Final Fantasy I theme, it's just the main theme, which has been used in basically every Final Fantasy game since, so...
Yeah, and Chaos Shrine is kind of trending because of Stranger of Paradise anyway.
I wonder, I have yet to hear that soundtrack. I still need to play that game, and I probably will once I finish moving.
I would have played it if it was running with any sort of reasonable frame rate on my computer.
Oh dear.
But alas, it is not.
That is unfortunate.
Indeed.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to this new set list later this year. Vegas is October 1st. LA is December 10th or whatever. They haven't announced any Honolulu shows, so I'm probably going to have to fly to see it, which I don't mind doing because I've flown to see these guys before. I've flown to see Distant Worlds before. I will fly in the future to see more of this stuff. That's how dedicated I am to this community and to this music. And that's my concert review. It was just a really great time that had me just vibing in my chair, and it felt great.
Wonderful stuff. Now then, what have you been playing lately?
Arknights, the NieR Light event, some cool EDM stuff going on there.
No.
And that's kind of it. I've been so busy moving, I haven't really been playing much other than the same stuff I've been playing. So, Bravely Second, which I've talked about at length, FF14, which I've talked about at length, etc.
And there is something we have been playing together a little.
Oh, right.
Earth Defense Force for Earth Defense Force 4.1, A Shadow of New Despair, has these inspiring little tracks that are, they're not exactly breaking new ground, but that's kind of this game in a nutshell. It just does things with some endearing simplicity to them.
I'm reminded...
Okay, you sold yourself in the world. Here's some sold yourself in the world music.
Yeah. I'm reminded... This franchise reminds me of... in a weird way, it reminds me of the Mercenary series of strategy RPGs.
Yeah, exactly.
In that
That's
it's
the same level of kind of jank.
Yeah. It's not treading any new ground, but it does what it does competently enough. The music is not bad at all. It hasn't really been that noteworthy, but I did hear some pretty cool guitar lines in there. It does its job, and it does it well.
Yes. And then when it comes to other games I've played, and we've played, in fact, Vampire Survivors got a new track selection option. You'll have to see it.
Oh yeah, no, it got a jukebox. It also got a new character with a really cool track. A terrible weapon, which, well, terrible to me. You think it's okay, I guess. I found the Shadow Pinion very underwhelming, which prompted me to actually mod the game and trade their weapon for someone else's. And it worked.
Yeah, first try, too.
Yeah, I was actually very surprised I got it working that quickly.
Popular video game modder Gale in Firestone.
Hi. But, yeah, no, this is not really relevant, but I've modded games before. I've worked on mods before. This was the first time I made a decision to mod a game just for myself. Just go, I want to fix this, and I'm not going to wait for someone else to do it for me. Let's figure out how, and I did.
The game is thankfully pretty much friendly, as I've heard.
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly easy to do if you have at least a very basic understanding of Java. And the new track for the new character is really cool. I mean, you have a succubus with an electric guitar, which seems to be a Devil May Cry 3 reference, if I had to guess. Not that they haven't dipped into that well before, as one of the characters on the title screen is sharing Bayonetta's pose, and a knockoff of Bayonetta herself shows up in the game as Pugnala, the one with the four guns, which makes sense.
And her starting weapons is, four guns.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like they're down with this franchise as much as they're down with Castlevania, so having the Devil May Cry 3 inspired character playing some music that would not be out of place entirely in Devil May Cry 3 makes sense.
And the Arcana basically Castlevania soundtrack names, but with the numbers failed off, like Boogaroo of Illusions. Come on.
Yeah, no, so the new music, very cool. I like that game. That's a $3 game, guys. I don't normally advertise games, and I'm not sponsored, but seriously, it's $3, and it's giving me more content than a lot of AAA games. Go support this developer, they're awesome.
Just feels good to go around, move as your weapon shoot for yourself, and unlock things.
Right?
Kind of a similar schema as Risk of Rain, actually.
Okay. I played the first one. I was okay with it. It wasn't my kind of game, but I got it. Apparently, the second one is very different, and I have not played that one yet.
Yeah, the second one adds another dimension.
Yeah, apparently it's actually a 3D game, not a 2D game, which really threw me off.
Yep.
Like, sequels don't usually do that.
Yeah, and it's very strange, but to the point that when it released and when it got into its expansion as well, it basically solidified the game as something that's very different, that does things greater without invalidating the first game.
Which is always what you want a sequel to do.
Yeah.
I played too many...
Speaking of sequels to popular games,
okay.
I've also played some Rogue Legacy 2.
How is that?
It's very good. It's art style-wise, it's very similar, even though the technologies used are completely different. You do not notice that it's 3D models and that it's 2.5D at all. It just looks like very crisp sprite work. And it's there's a lot more gameplay diversity options right from the get-go. Given that it spent a lot of time in early access, they had a lot of freedom in order to think of the game not only as a starting experience, but as it progresses throughout the many times playing it and doing other attempts, and it's got, as a result, a way healthier end-game and post-game progression, I think.
Right on.
And some of the tracks are pretty cool, like the... whenever you enter the first room of the castle, it's just a nice tune that... you don't really notice it at first, and then you realize that it's now a permanent part of your brain, whether you want it or not.
That actually reminds me of FF14 Endwalker's regular boss theme. Honestly, because that's sort of the progression that happened to me. I'm like, this song's okay, moving on, and then it was just living rent-free in my head after that.
Exactly. Also, shoutouts to naming the track against the flower-based boss, Waltz of the Murder Flower. That's a good track name.
That is a very good track name. Waltz of the Murder Flower, I like it.
Yeah. And finally, because I've been playing a lot of video games, as it turns out, there's Songs of Conquest that released in early access recently, which is Heroes of Might and Magic-like.
Ooh!
With some very cool actual sprite work this time.
We will have to talk about this off stream.
All right.
I was not aware this existed, and I am an old-school Heroes of Might and Magic fan, so this actually sounds really cool.
Yeah, them too. Like, they're wearing their influence on their sleeve.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like the actual Heroes of Might and Magic team have put out a good game in 20 years.
Exactly. 20 years? I think Heroes 5 was more recent than that.
Was Heroes 5 good?
Straight of the East a lot.
Okay, fair enough. I played a little bit of, I think it was it 5 or 6? I played a really bad one, and I'm just like, what happened here?
Okay, was there notable city screens or not?
No, it was like 3/4 of a screen, and it barely did anything. I was very annoyed by it.
Okay, so two things. First, those annoying 3/4 of the screen that was patched because the original version didn't even have that. And that was indeed 6.
Okay. Okay, so then I might have just...
complete 3D flyovers that were the best city screens in the series.
Okay, I might have just missed that one, I think, is what happened here. That's why I thought it didn't exist. I apologize for that one, then. That's my bad.
No problem at all. It's a good one.
Fair enough.
And Songs of Conquest so far is shaping up to be pretty good. Like, to give you an idea, some people have problems with an early part of the campaign, because though it released in early access, there's already parts of a campaign that's out.
Great.
And And instead of right away patching things or something like that, they just released a walkthrough of the complicated part to explain a little bit what they expect from the players.
Mm-hmm.
Because they kind of know the game, and it shows even in the unit design that's very subtle like that. Like, it's not, oh, this unit does a completely different things than this unit. No, you kind of have to play with your army to know and feel what they're good at.
I like that.
And the soundtrack at its base level is also very similar in atmosphere to Heroes of Might and Magic soundtrack. It's peacefully taking you from one turn to the next, basically, and underlining your faction identity. Less so the nature of the terrain you're on, which was more of a thing in 4 in particular, but it kind of takes you along. And then suddenly, as I searched for other tracks, I got one that they released as part of a trailer preview 2 years ago, apparently, which has what I can only describe as a necromancer's folk song.
Necromancer's folk song?
Yeah.
Oh, that just sounds
basically about
nifty.
taking vengeance and burning all the elves.
Okay. So the Forsaken, but not like written by Blizzard.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm good with that. Sorry, I've had, like, without having played the game in a while, I've had Warcraft, like, on the mind recently, because a lot of my friends play it, and a lot of my friends are having problems with it. And I'm just like, I feel sorry for them. This isn't even me on, like, the FF14 versus WoW, like, grudge match. This is me just going, like, you guys know you have a bad product and can't stop playing it, and I really wish you had a better one to play.
Yeah, like, I think we're both people that say 2 games that are in the same space can both be good.
We can coexist. I wish we could.
Just that in this juncture, that's not really what's happening.
Yeah. Blizzard is kind of a broken company. And now it looks like Activision's about to get bought out, and who knows what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've had this on my mind recently. There's all sorts of weird stuff going on. I don't know. If I hear an undead faction actually being cool, I'm good with that. So a Necromancer's folk song sounds very good.
Especially since this one isn't full undead. It's just a barony that decides, you know what? Necromancy is pretty cool. Let's integrate that as part of our identity rather than, say, make it our entire thing.
I'm okay with that. That's interesting. I like that.
Yes. And I don't have any other games to bring up, so unless you do...
I've probably forgotten one? Oh, I have. I've been playing some Peglin off stream.
Oh.
And that is a combination of Peggle and a roguelike. It works.
Yes, I've touched on it a little bit.
It works better than you think it does, and the soundtrack's actually pretty nifty.
It's adorable.
It's adorable. It's an adorable game, and it's got some pretty good music. I've not been streaming it. It's just one of those things that I play to wind down. I don't think it'd make for an interesting stream, but I like the music. I think it's a pretty alright game.
And I mean, I think it will eventually become more interesting as a streaming thing, but as it stands, it's still maybe a bit early, but it's more a personal fun until it takes more time in the oven.
Yeah. I think that's an accurate statement. Well, that's it then for this episode. Remember that you can always get in touch with us at music.arcade.podcast@gmail.com or my Discord, which you can find in the link below. And all the tracks mentioned on this episode are available for listen on the playlist in our YouTube channel, assuming the algorithm lets us keep them. We'll see you guys next time, hopefully with Eddie's health issues also having evolved.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.